Good morning. Welcome to Planet Mojo. I'm going to take you on a garden walk this morning. I've been neglecting that for a while. I'm back here by the barn, which is completely overgrown. It's got bindweed growing over it. All this stuff is coming out in the fall, unfortunately. But back to the gardens. All that stuff up there and all down in here was replacement seed where it was overtaken with weeds. Call it the weed and seed method. But this stuff will all start flowering much later than the other stuff. So as that fades, this stuff will start flowering. And speaking of fading, we already have a lot of the perennial wildflowers are starting to fade. I have no idea what some of this stuff is like that. And I guess that's a local weed or a wildflower, but I really don't have any idea. I let one or two of them grow every year because they look so interesting. That is common mullein, I think, which is a weed, but again, I let one or two grow because they look great, if it's not the whole garden full of them. So we'll come around this way. Again, fading perennial wildflowers, and then got some weed and seed going on here, so there'll be a second flush of flowers in the not so distant future. There's a big the hell is that? It's not pig. It is a pigweed, but it's water hemp, I believe, is what they call that one. I got to yank that out of there because look at all those seeds. That'll just make it hell to get rid of this stuff next year. But you could see the zinnias are just going insane. And those cherry tomatoes are just massive. I don't know if I've ever seen one quite that big. My bulbs did not do so good. I believe it was 20 of one type and 3 of another. I think the 3 came up, and out of the 20, which were stargazers, it looks like there's 4 of them coming up. Maybe some more will come up later, but I don't know. It doesn't look good. This, I don't know. I should probably yank these out about halfway through the season. Maybe I'll do that next year and put a new flower in there, or possibly just trim this back and see if it flowers again. It took a pretty good hit by not watering it for 3 or 4 days while we had company here. And it looked like the whole thing was dead, but I watered the hell out of it and it came back. Another weed and seed. That'll start flowering pretty soon. It'll come around the corner. My poor little jalapeno pepper plant is down in there. I had hoped it would at least try to compete with the zinnias and come out over the top, but that's not what it did. And here are the cherry tomatoes. Just massive. That's 2 plants, and it's, I don't know, they're at least 5 feet wide. And again, here's the weed and seed. Just yanked some weeds, dropped some seeds, and put some peat over it. way back when, maybe a month ago or so. And then every once in a while I'll go in and yank out a really big weed like lamb's quarter or something. There's a couple in there. I'll get at them. And that's about it for, oh, a hollyhock. I'm not sure what, we have a yellow hollyhock that comes back every year, but I don't think this is it. Unless it's mutated, this is kind of white. And we got some sunflowers growing in there. And in the ditch garden, I have some stargazers down there. I planted those at the same time that I planted these lilies here, which did really well, but the stargazers just don't get very tall. So that was probably a very bad spot for them. I'll have to replant some maybe in here. I like the stargazers. They have a good stink to them. Sunflower, the birds around here will yank every seed out of there as soon as it's ripe. Coneflower, just tons and tons of wildflowers in here. And again, that was I put an annual mix in here every year. And that's what some of this stuff is. Unfortunately, the annual mix includes this wild carrot, and it's pretty invasive, so I wish it didn't include that. I end up spending a lot of time yanking that stuff out from the previous years. The milkweed has tons of pods. And I've gone in here looking for monarch cocoons and have yet to find one. I've looked the last couple of years and still have not found one. I just started germinating prairie milkweed, and that's what's going to end up in this garden. This common milkweed is going down at the bottom of the hill where it can be as invasive as it wants. This stuff is just taking everything over. It pops up inside the corn. It's out in the yard. It's just nuts. I can see why milkweed is not that popular. And speaking of the corn, this corn is quite unusual. It tillers. So this one right here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stalks. And, you know, your average corn has one stalk, the stuff that's grown in the farm fields around here. This stuff tillers and has anywhere from 3 to 5 stalks coming out. But it's not doing much as far as, you know, it hasn't tasseled yet. We got some action up there. I did plant it late, so hopefully that comes for me. Green peppers, also planted late, and no peppers on it yet, but the plants themselves are doing quite well, even though they're kind of shaded a bit by this massive corn, which is about 8 feet tall now. Carrots for the horses. It's one hell of a crowded garden. I'll have to do better on that next year. I want to containerize it. And as we move away from that milkweed, This is more of a pure prairie plot. And the sunflowers are part of the annuals. There is the yellow hollyhock. Too much grass in here, but there's just no way to stop it without killing the whole thing. After a while, it'll kind of naturalize. I wish it was prairie grass in here, though. And speaking of prairie grass, here is the Little Bluestem Patch. I don't know, it's over 100 feet long and 20 feet wide at its widest. 3 days ago, it might have been 2 days ago, I sprayed this with 2,4-D, and you can see that all this broadleaf stuff, it looks like a salad. There was so much of it. All this broadleaf stuff is dying back. I had talked to the roundstone seed people and asked them, when can I get in here and spray 2,4-D? This stuff is, shading out my grass. And they said when Little Bluestem gets 6 inches tall. Well, I have all different heights, and it's hard to tell which is which. Some of this is just weed grass, some of it's Little Bluestem. So I sprayed, and it doesn't look like any of the grass is dying, but all of the broadleaf stuff is dying. So that's a good thing. Now I'll just have to figure out which grass is which grass. I have samples planted, but it's still kind of hard to tell. So at some point, the annuals will die in the fall, and if I put a pre-emergence herbicide down, then they won't come back next year, and the prairie grass will be able to take over the place. I might put a few of them milkweed here as well, the prairie milkweed. Eventually this will have other prairie grasses and wildflowers in it. It'll be a small patch of prairie, but I got to start out with the grasses. That's the best way to do it, because then I can use 2,4-D and kill back the weeds until the grass is established. Then I can add the flowers to it once I've controlled the weeds. And we'll show one more. It's a beautiful morning. Very little humidity. You can see the different ridges going back into the distance. This is going to be planted with prairie grasses and flowers as well. It's killed back this year, and I'll have to keep killing it back. That'll get rid of the warm season plants, and then in the fall I'll get cool season stuff trying to sprout, and I can kill that back as well. Then in the spring I will need to kill it back twice again and then plant. And we're also planting a few trees, especially right in here, some bur oaks. We're planting 10 of them next year. So that'll wrap up this garden tour. Oh wait, I guess we'll show the one last one here. The hens and chicks. I've planted this, if you haven't watched the other ones, I planted this 7 years ago. And it's still here. It's flowered a few times, and I mean, it's growing in a ½ inch maybe of peat that I jammed into the crevice of that rock. It gets most of its, or gets all of its nutrient from the air and right from the rock itself, I guess. All right, I'll show the vines too. This Lakemont seedless vine is doing the best it's ever done, and it looks like I'm going to have some decent grapes if the birds don't beat me to it. And these wine grapes are doing quite well as well. I just had to spray them for a little bout of fungus not too long ago, but they're doing pretty good. I got some berry damage here. Not doing the best. There could be a lot more clusters than this, but they're not doing bad. Maybe I'll make a little bit of wine out of some of this stuff this year. And this second year vine. Okay, that'll wrap up this garden walk. Make sure you subscribe and click on the little update icon if you want to receive notice when we upload new videos. Thanks for watching and have a great day.